amount of water to the fire department who is filling a tank and then pumping it out of the tank to the engine, and then the engine pressurizes that. Mark also shared at the meeting the last month when we had the meeting, he also shared that the state has come up with this new calculator where they know based upon the size of the house, the number of bedrooms, the size of the property, how much water it takes per BTUs of the fire to put a fire out. So when they do a calculator now that estimates whether or not they're gonna have enough water, and then they can contact the water department and say, you know, look, we need to do something, all right? We can go up and we can shut the gravity feed tank and hold that in reserve. We can increase the pressure at the pump house so that we can maintain the pressure in the line, maintain that 100 gallons a minute coming out of these old system hydrants, okay? And then as we've depleted the water out of the tank, then we go up and open the valve and we let the gravity feed back, and we've got 4 hours more water to provide to that fire. Had we not taken any of that into consideration before, we would have been depleting both of them at the same time, and our emergency services is cut in half.
Well, the thing to note there is that these questions of how, okay, the power goes up, there's no generator at the pump house. Pumps off, okay? So now the tank is going to gravity feed. Now we know, even though we asked 9 million times, no answers, because everybody knew everything about the system, but they didn't. Nobody knew how long we could run off the tank. How long can the town run off the tank if the power's out?
Yep.
Nobody knew that. Now we can somewhat estimate that and give you a
Because of the tank
educated.
inspection, they helped
Correct.
a lot of information.
But now we know we're wasting 40% of it.
Right.
Right.
So what we thought at one time was 36 hours based on 275,000 gallons, we know now is only 60% of that.
It's weird when you get the
So
information.
so we have an actual estimate of what we have in reserve at 60% of a pressurized tank. We know that we have nearly half of what we thought we had. And we can work with that, we can regulate that. The fire department has equipment that we can work together and regulate those things. That's a huge step forward from where we were a year ago. And it's not the fault of previous water commissioners, it's not the fault of the selectmen who came in and just tried to maintain the system. It's nobody's fault, it's just progress, that's it.
So the talk about a bypass valve at the pump station is no longer necessary?
To clarify, I'm glad you brought that up, because of what I just said, treated water, okay?
Correct. But this
We
was
spend
gonna
on
bypass.
average per month, what's it, $4,000 in caustic soda?
Well, no, it's not quite that much, but it is
Well,
about,
between that and chlorine,
right. So each barrel of caustic soda costs us about between $1,400 and $1,500, and then depending on what we use for chlorine, it's a couple $100 each time they fill it. If they have to fill it, you know, twice a month,
that depends on usage.
depends on usage,
So
right?
let's
So-
say, for instance, you have a fire,
Yeah.
which again, we clarified this
treated
with
water.
the fire department. In an emergency situation, if there's a fire hydrant there and it's house burning, hook the hydrant up, it's common sense. Who cares if it's treated, put the fire out. But if you do a splish splash, for instance, to spray treated water into a natural habitat of a pond makes no sense whatsoever.
I get that, but they've also answered that with
Correct.
Corral.
So our plan was to go in the pump house, do a loop from the pump.
Yeah,
So it will bypass the chemicals. So had they wanted to come in and fill a tanker, okay,
yeah.
they could shut off the chemical side, turn on just the flow from the pump, untreated, fill the truck.
So is
Good
that
to go.
still on the drawing board?
Yes.
We want to, but we gotta fund it. And we're trying, the rates are already higher than they should be. So we're trying to
But we
Get
don't,
our
we
bearings
don't know
of-
what the cost of a generator would be.
It doesn't require a generator to do a bypass of the valve.
No, we're talking, when they're talking, no, I'm jumped the gun. But we don't even know what the cost of a generator would be. And you spoke of the electricity costing so much and so forth, and that's when you.
electricity high.
We just got an off-the-cuff estimate during a budget committee meeting last year that the $65,000 received in taxation would have covered the cost without the grant.
But they didn't receive the 65.
They did, though. You keep
Where-
saying they
Where
didn't,
in the town report and the audit does it show that they
but
received?
read Article 1 of the same one. Read Article 1. It includes in the operating funds, the amount for the warrant article. Will you approve this amount? Then the warrant articles being separate still include that amount. So the tax, let me give you an example, Joanne, of what I'm talking about. Last year's water budget, okay? Last year's water budget was put through by the interim water commissioners
Correct.
at $142,152, okay? It was submitted at $140,152. 2 weeks later, it came back at $142,000, okay, $142,452. That was approved by the budget committee. 2 weeks later, after it had been back to the selectmen, another $2,000 was added onto that. From the time that it was initially proposed to the time the selectmen put it
Before the budget.
after the budget
It
committee.
already went to.
They added $2,000 after the budget committee approved it. So it added a total of $6,152. Now, the MS, the MS,
27?
the MS
727.
727 reports that the estimated expenses were gonna be $138,000. But the estimated revenues was gonna be $144,652. That means the taxpayers paid an additional $6,152 to the water department. But the water department never received the funds. Now again, in December it was $140,000. In January, it was $144,000. By the time it was approved in February, on the 15th of February, after it had gone through the budget committee,
Yep.
another $2,000 was added. That was $6,152 applied to taxes as part of the operating capital for the town. $6,152 never came to the water department
No, but it would have gone into the unexpended funds and.
for the town,
Applied,
for the town,
Can't,
not for the water department.
applied to your tax offset.
can't commingle. They were
You cannot collect taxes for the water department.
It pays for itself. The fees from the water department paid for itself.
But that figure was supposed to represent what you were going to accrue, right? That number that goes before the budget committee, that you presented this year, because I can wrap my head around that number. The number you presented this year, that's what you would expected to collect in.
Here's what the Department of Revenue says. Whatever your expenses for the water department are, is what you have to report for income.
Zero.
They have to zero out, money in, money out.
There is no profit.
There can't be any amount to be raised from taxation to be applied to the water department.
Can't.
And there was
be commingled.
$6,152, an amount to be raised from taxation that went into the town through town taxes that wasn't paid to the water department. Those are the things we can't have. Just can't do it.
I don't know, when I went to the workshop for the budget committee, I had a whole list of questions, and one of them was, and I didn't understand that whole water department thing. And they said you have to appropriate funds in order to spend funds.
Any department
So
does.
the selectmen had to put the water department in the original Article 1 as submitted, and the town voted on a total number, but it was always explained as a wash.
Okay,
We have-
so that's exactly the point. Okay, as of this year, and as of every other year before, those two numbers in the MS 727 were always exactly equal, except for 2022 tax year. 2022 tax year added $6,152 to be taken in from taxation, and it went to the town capital reserve.
Didn't come to the water department.
Didn't come to the water department.
It came
went to
from the
town
taxpayers.
Capital reserve for what account?
Can tell you,
How do you know it went to a capital reserve?
where else could it go?
Because the MS nine clearly states what funds went where. If a new account was created, it would be
Okay,
new
so
funds.
again, the point of this is, I brought this up during the budget committee, asked Sean specifically, Sean says, I'll have to ask for Lisa. Never came back to the budget committee with an answer to that question. Never addressed that. It still got applied in taxation, but it was never addressed. It got swept under the rug, moved on, we're done with that, let's go,
It was
It was
done.
there.
okay?
Why
Why
haven't
don't you
we-
follow up on it? You were on it.
How many times you
It's
want me
done.
to follow up on it, Joanna? I've been told that I'm accusing people of doing something. I didn't accuse anybody, I
Why
flat
does-
out proved
why-
it.
Why does the selectman have to check with the secretary of the selectman's office?
She has all the stuff.
Cause she's the only one that knows the numbers.
But don't you selectmen should know all that? And,
I can't, I'm not gonna speak as a selectman tonight.
no, I mean,
So this
I
was
would agree with
raised,
you.
it
Yes.
was
Yes.
raised with the selectmen, it was raised before the end of the year. Is the water department going to get that $6,000 you raised from taxation, or are you gonna give it back to the taxpayers?
right,
You clearly appropriated that for expenses of the water department, you clearly taxed people that amount of money, are you gonna give it to the water
and
department?
we paid.
That's right, and it was paid, are you gonna give it back to the water department, are you gonna give